Hello, it's that time again. It is Hot Takes with Kari and Keelan. This is episode number 17. I am Kari Rae Davis with Kari Sells the City and Keller Williams.
And I'm Keelan Harvey with the Harvey Home Team.
So there's been a lot of things that have happened since we spoke last, Keelan. First of all, I want to talk about, just what's happening with rates right now. The Fed just met. And then second of all, I want to chat a little bit about the National Realtors Association settlement that is pending into July. So those are two exciting topics that I want to get your input off of. So,
Agreed. Two of the big ones that we're seeing all over the place right now.
right.
Starting with the Fed announcement this week, that was a big deal for mortgage rates because we were very concerned. The Fed has agreed to do three cuts this year, and kind of the way the Fed has been in the past in their history, we were concerned that they were going to come in and any word that Powell speaks will affect the market. So if he
Right.
said anything about doing less than three cuts, that would have not been good for mortgage rates. And there was some interesting jobs and inflation data that came out, and we were concerned he would. And fortunately, he didn't. He confirmed that they are going to do three cuts this year, and which was actually good for mortgage rates. So it didn't hurt us. We didn't get way better, but we could have been way worse. We're just incrementally better and staying pace, which is great.
Okay. So did they indicate which, when they were going to be making those cuts? I know they've got another meeting in June. Is that right?
Next meeting's in May, so
May. Okay.
and they're very careful with their words. It's 50-50 at this point if they're going to make that cut in May or not. We knew
Okay.
they were going to make a cut today here in March, so to be continued to see if they are going to make that cut that early. But considering it may be longer, unfortunately.
Right. Well, it just kind of goes to show that if you're a buyer in the market, just, stay tried and true to your process. And refinancing is always going to be an option.
Yeah, the reality is, I mean, it's still gonna, rates are still gonna go down. They confirmed that this week. So if anything, it's positive, right? So we still
Right.
know rates are gonna go down, and the advice that we've given everybody stays the same. It just may take a little bit longer, but we've been kind of up to speed, especially last few episodes, with
Right.
realizing it's not happening anytime soon.
Right. Well, it just goes to show that you and I have been consistent. So,
It's a good thing.
and then there's a lot of conversation. I'm hearing a lot of chatter over social media and the news, and you and I have been talking about it. But the National Realtor Association this week put a proposal to settle on the lawsuit out of Missouri. And one thing I want to say to people that are watching and listening is that the Washington Northwest MLS is not owned by or governed by the National Realtor Association. The Northwest MLS is owned by its member brokers. So all of us that are brokers in Washington state have to pay to be part of the Northwest MLS, and we are governed by our own Northwest MLS. So that's one major difference with Washington over this big NAR settlement. It is still affecting us, but I just want people to understand that we don't fall under the same rules that NARS governs other MLSs over.
Yeah, that's a valuable point. Yeah, 418 million, but it's not finalized yet, right? We
Right.
don't know until mid-July, it sounds like.
Right. And, I think that, one thing that I've always loved about being a Washington real estate broker is that Washington is by the book. Like when I moved to New Orleans and I was seeing some of the building practices in the South, I got a little nervous because it's not by the book down there. And I could see myself being somebody coming from an area that is so, boilerplate by the book. We've got rules that are in place for a reason. I could see myself getting in trouble. And I do appreciate that Washington has been ahead of the curve of this conversation, where back in January is when they started to require us by law to enter into a buyer agency agreement with our clients at the onset of consultation. And so, it's taking a little getting used to, but having that conversation with our buyers in the very beginning about these changes is helping make it so it is more transparent. So a lot of these changes that are going to be happening in other states, we are ahead of that curve already and already, implementing some of these changes before this ruling has even come up.
Yeah, and you see a lot of realtors freaking out, and you're not one of them, Kari Rae, which is which is awesome. But I'm not freaking out either. It's being made to be this huge deal, and it's really not once you kind of dive below the surface, especially when you have the media out there talking about like these headlines, like NAR agrees to slash realtor commissions. That's just flat out not true. And
Right.
and at the end of the day, um, it's just not true. Nobody agreed to anything. The reality is you just can't put the verbiage in the MLS about commissions when at the end of the day the seller can still pay commissions. That hasn't changed at all,
Right. So
right?
the big thing was what they decoupled. So it used to be that the listing agent, when you put your house on the market, the listing agent would negotiate the percentage that they would receive and the buyer broker would also receive. And that was basically coupling the commissions. And so is what this lawsuit has done is decoupled them. So now you've got your listing commission and then you have a buyer broker commission, which is part of the new conversation is if you are a selling your home, your agent is going to say, this is my fee for selling your home and all of the things that I do for you. And then you have the conversation is, what would you be willing to pay a buyer broker? And go into the
Yeah.
reasons to why it's beneficial to pay a buyer broker. Partly because as a seller, you're getting all of these proceeds from your home. I mean, hopefully your equity has grown and you are making tens of thousands of dollars over that down payment that you put in. So you've got the nest egg to pay these commissions. And as a buyer, if you're a first time home buyer, you're scraping your pennies together like so many people do when they buy a house for your down payment, your closing costs, and then all of a sudden you might have to also pay the compensation of your buyer broker. It's going to either keep buyers from being able to make an offer on a home if their buyer broker is not getting compensated, and that means the seller's probably not getting as many offers. Or it's going to cost the buyer broker or the buyer, excuse me, more money in closing costs.
Yeah, I don't see. I mean, they got to pay for, yeah, closing costs. Buyers got to pay for closing costs. They got to pay for their down payment. And
Mhm.
now they're expected to come up with a percentage to pay the buyer's agent. A lot of these people just can't do it. And
Right.
the thing that they're not talking about is this 3% is nothing new. Great agents like yourself, Kari, I mean, especially in Washington State, you're required to talk about all of this.
Mhm.
So, and that 3% is built into the price of the home,
Right.
right? It's not just money that came out of left field like they're trying to make it out to be. And I think a lot of these people don't realize that you guys don't, that 3%, you got to pay your broker, you
Right.
got to pay your business, your advertising. You guys are not just putting 3% in your pocket for no
Our health
reason.
insurance, our car
Yeah.
insurance. Yeah. If we have an admin or anybody that's a team, if you're running a team, you've got to pay your employees. So there's a lot that comes
Yeah.
out of that 3%. That 3% ends up maybe being 1% at the end of it. And if you're discounting that, then you're not making a paycheck. So I want to caution people that think that, if you're going to start working with a broker and they start telling you, what their fees are, if you start talking to say, oh, somebody else is willing to take less, well, that means they're probably not very experienced because they haven't been in the business long enough to know how much everything is. And they're trying to get into the business any way that they can, which means they're willing to take less. And that means that you're probably not getting very good representation. And I think that, as an agent and a buyer broker and a listing agent, making sure that we're conveying to our clients what value we bring to the table is huge. And I think part of that is looking at reviews and seeing what our clients are saying about us. But then also another thing is what kind of relationships does this broker have with the other brokers? Because
Yeah.
so much of this is relationship based that, like I looked at one of the listings that I just recently sold, and there's information at the listing on the bottom that gives like sales information to us on the MLS. Well, there's now a little comment section that the listing agent can put notes that comment on the transaction. And I was so touched because the agent was like, Kari Rae was great to work with. And I was like, oh my gosh, I appreciate that because that means anybody that looks at that particular sale and sees that I was the buyer broker on it will get that feedback from the listing agent. And I just think that you also need to understand like how good is your broker at working with the other agents, because that's where a lot of this relationship, negotiation comes in, is making sure that we're conveying to the other agent how wonderful our buyer is and how good of a team we have. Like you and I, Keelan, I always talk about how awesome we are as a team together, because I want to give them that confidence that if they choose to work with me and you and our buyer, that they're going to have a smooth transaction. And I just think that, everybody's talking about money, and it's not all about that. It's like being successful in getting your offer accepted and getting to the closing table. So we earn our commissions. People think that, it's just all this money, but it's like we're licensed with the state. We're guiding you through one of the biggest purchases of your life. And I think it's important to really like have a real full view as to what we're talking about.
I mean, that's decades of scar tissue. Like we couldn't make up the things that happened during transactions.
Right.
The only way to do it is by having thousands of them. And still to this day, we have things that come up
We're still
that
learning. I'm
we're
learning on the transaction you and I have right now. It's like, oh, I haven't had this come up, and this is really good information for me to be able to like put in my tool belt.
Absolutely. It's just years and years of trial. And that the only way you can get that is experience. You wouldn't even know where to start, what to ask. Everything's like a story problem. And there's so many details. I couldn't even fabricate if I was the most creative person in the world. You know what I mean? Of
Yeah,
how these things go down. And if you're a seller and you think you're gonna, save 3%, I just think it's crazy town because you're limiting the field so significantly.
right,
These buyers are going to decide to pay less because they have to have that 3%, or they're just not going to have the money for it. And the idea is to have as much interest as possible so you can get as much money as possible,
right,
for your home. So I really see a lot of stepping over, dollars for quarters,
right.
unfortunately, in some people's mindset. The optimistic part of me, though, thinks that's not going to change a lot. I think, you know what, people understand the value of having professionals in this, just
Right,
like you have representation with anything else you pay for in life.
right.
Your CPAs, your attorneys, your doctors, you're paying to have a professional, and this is the most important decision you're ever going to make in your life, and you're just going to try to wing it. I mean, it's just not a good idea for anybody.
Well, and I think that if people think they're gonna go unrepresented in a transaction, it's very dangerous, because you need somebody that's giving you good advice and guiding you through the process and making sure that you're not doing something stupid to jeopardize your money. And, put yourself in a situation where, you know what, maybe you end up having to hire a lawyer to get you out of a really sticky situation, or you hire a lawyer anyway to be your representation, and they're going to charge you $500 an hour potentially. You know what I mean? And like, I bet you that commission that maybe you thought you were saving it might end up costing you more than just if you'd worked with a professional.
Well, and I mean, I'm going to say it because I'm a lender. I don't know if you can say it, but the lawyer, I feel like this whole thing's a money grab between me and you. Like this whole lawsuit, like the lawsuit itself, and that on top of that, some of these people that think they're going to cut corners, they're going to go to lawyers to try to put contracts together. But those lawyers, I mean, the contract is an important piece, but a very small piece
Mhm.
among a gigantic bigger picture with a million other moving parts. So, I think it's apples and oranges as
Right.
far as trying to compare a lawyer to a real estate agent, an experienced great real estate agent, like not even in the same galaxy, like nowhere
Right.
near, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's really, if you are out there in the market and you've got questions, I think it's really important to be able to sit down with your agent, or you can call me or Keelan, to talk about like what these changes mean. And it's going to be an evolving process. I mean, the judgment isn't finalized yet. It has to be approved by the courts. Washington is already 2/3 of the way ahead of everybody else. So we're already, spearheading these conversations. I have had some clients that were like, I don't want to sign a buyer agency agreement with you. We're not ready for that. And it's like, okay, well, then I really can't show you houses right now. And if you think that you've got another agent that's going to do it for you, please know that this conversation is going to be had, whether you sign something with me for representation or you sign something with somebody else. So I think that it's going to be a learning curve, even for just the general public out there. So,
And I mean, there's no way to skip over that. Every agent has to have this agreement in place. There's no sidestepping it. Like, and the flip side, I don't think good agents are going to hold you hostage either on that. So, like, people are taking this like, I'm stuck forever with this agent. I mean, no agent wants to work with somebody they're not happy with.
well,
You
nobody
know?
wants to work with somebody they don't get along with either. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I even had a potential listing and she's like, what happens if we don't get along? And I'm like, well, then we cannot work together. It's like sometimes you don't jive and this is a big decision and it's really important to work with people that you work well with. Like I don't want to work with somebody that's not fun to work with. There's a lot of work and it can be very stressful. And if you've got somebody that's being mean to you or condescending or abusive, like I would rather not. And I've had that happen and I've stuck through it. And there's times where I wish that I would have followed my gut from the very beginning and said, I don't think that we're the right fit because it ended up creating a lot of hardship for me emotionally. And it was abusive. And I'm not choosing to do that any longer. And I think that this is also going to help us as brokers be more choosy about who we work with. And it's interesting. I get a lot of like spammy text messages. People are like, "Oh, my name's so and so, and I want to buy a house in Burien." And I'd say, "Okay, great." And they're like, "Message me on WhatsApp." And it's like, "Okay, that feels like a scam." And I think that having this layer of professionalism and being able to tell somebody that I have to have a consultation with you via Zoom or in person before I start to work for you is going to help us as brokers cut out the noise of all of this fluff of people trying to scam us for our time and our resources.
And I mean, I think when things like this happen is the biggest opportunity, right?
Mhm.
And that's what I'm excited for. And I know you're excited for it too. These big changes, it's going to weed the field out a bit because some people are going to self-select. When you think and when you look at things as like a challenge, like some people are, I mean, I've seen, you get the social medias and hearing rumors of people just melting down over this, which to me, I'm excited and like, fine, show us the rules. Let's keep going. Like more
Right,
opportunity, more for us to flourish because we are professionals and we know what we bring to the table. So, for those that don't bring that same level of service and stuff, maybe they shouldn't be getting compensated what they're getting compensated, but I know that we sure should. So
right,
that's fine with me. And we'll show you that value.
right. Well, it's like the proof's in the pudding, and like I said, talking to other clients, and asking about, how, I've had buyers ask me, how do you make us stand out in the sea of buyers? And it's like part of it is my communication with the listing agent and making sure that they know that if they work with me, and I've had deals happen more than once where they said to me straight up that we're working with you, Kari. We're choosing you because we like you and we know you're going to get the job done, which is a huge compliment coming from the seller. I mean, I'm still representing my buyer, but knowing that they've got the confidence that we're going to make it happen. I mean, that's so invaluable. And it makes me feel good. Like I'm doing a good job for my clients and I'm being recognized. So we're
Yeah.
tooting our horns. Do do do.
Yeah. No, you deserve it though. It's important because you built
Yeah.
those relationships over many, many years. And at the end of the day, the goal is who is likely to, if I'm selling my house, where's it likely to close? So who's the lender? And are they going to deliver? And who's this agent? And are they going to be amicable to work through this process so we meet the mutual goal of selling this home?
In
And
closing.
and closing, yeah, and
Right.
actually getting this across the finish line. And, that's so important to be able to have that invaluable experience to where and clients don't realize there's so much that goes on behind the scenes. On the front, they have this smooth, easy transaction. That's because we've already done all the legwork, all the heavy lifting. So all they're experiencing is the very tippy top of the highest experience that we can provide them because that's why we're here. Right.
Right. Well, and I tell all my clients, my job is to make this as painless as possible for you. And so many of my buyers are like, oh my gosh, that was so easy. And I'm like, it was supposed to be, and then there's some transactions that aren't quite as easy. And even for my sellers, I'm trying to make this as easy as possible for you. There's a lot of work that goes into it and everybody's going to have to pull their weight. But when it's time to fly and like go, just once if everything's done correctly, we should be moving pretty easy. So,
Well, and you've done so many of these transactions, and so the good, the bad, the ugly. You see the red flags early. I mean, same with me on the lending side. I can tell you very quickly where I can see possible, issues or,
the train coming
and
to a crash.
exactly, we're
Yeah,
way ahead of it, but because we know. And like I said, you can't replace that. That's just experience.
right. Well, I invite anybody out there that's got questions, set up a time to talk with Keelan and I because we are not afraid of this conversation. I know my worth. I know Keelan knows his worth, and we work damn hard for our clients. I can certainly say that. So if you want somebody that is going to be backing you and advocating for you and making sure that your loan gets done when it's supposed to, Keelan and I are your dream team. So,
Love it.
but call us with questions, message us with questions because, this is a time where I think if you're not informed, you could be misled, and that might mean that you're going down the wrong path.
Yeah, I mean, I won't name a name. I already said, oh yeah, I signed one of those forms from this so and so internet company. I'm not sure what I even signed. So you deserve to have the information and have it explained to you. And like, don't just, just sign things without having any understanding. I know Kari Rae would never ever present that form without you knowing exactly what's on it. What does this mean for me going forward?
Right.
So by all means, get all the information ahead of time and don't just go with the flow on this necessarily.
Right, right. No, there's so many changes happening. You want to be ready. And the clients that I've talked to about this and started off, because it's a conversation that's evolving, right? I mean, we're
Yeah.
having these conversations, and some of my people I've been working with for a couple years, so it's like we're kind of working our way into this conversation because I might not see them very often. They might be out of state, and it's just not something I'm seeing them one-on-one all the time. But it's important to have somebody that's able to help you understand what's really going on so you know what's going to be expected of you, and then also you also know what's being provided to you. So well,
Absolutely.
Keelan, I think I love it when we are able to do this because I do think that we give really valuable information to people. So if any of you out there want to talk with Keelan and I again, please don't hesitate. If you want to call me, you can. My number is 206-330-6985.
And my number is 206-321-4941.
Awesome. Okay, well, this is going to be a conversation that is evolving. So, to be continued.
To be continued.
Awesome. Okay, Keelan, thanks for your time today.
You
Have
as
a good day,
well.
everybody.
See ya.